This reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. This week is Easter, Resurrection for Every Soul. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 20, we read the inspiring account of Jesus' resurrection. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone that taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth, and cometh to Simon Peter, and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled, for fear of the Jews, came Jesus, and stood in their midst, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. The resurrection of Jesus, doubted by many, but affirmed by those who were close to him, was a miraculous event, though one not unique in history. For many saints of other religions have appeared to their disciples after death. Sometimes their appearances have been, as that of Jesus was, in flesh and blood form, and not only in vision. Paramahansa Yogananda relates, in Autobiography of a Yogi, the account of his guru Sri Yukteswar's resurrection after his earthly passing. Miracles of this type are revealed only rarely when the masses, to the masses, but accounts of them, related by men and women of reputed truthfulness, have inspired many devotees with faith in the reality of subtler than material states of existence. Resurrection, Yogananda explained, means transformation, ultimately from any lower state of being to a higher one. Worldly consciousness cannot imagine such transformation except in terms of, perhaps, an improvement of the present mess of pottage with the addition of a new flavoring. Divine consciousness, however, is capable of taking the base metal of worldliness and transforming it into the spiritual gold of divine wisdom and love. In keeping with this truth, the Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter tells us, Ah, ye who into this ill world are come, fleeting and false, set your faith fast on me. Fix your heart and thought on me. Adore me. Bring offerings to me. Make me prostrations. Make me your supremest joy, and undivided unto my rest your spirits shall be guided. Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning and welcome everybody to Easter. It's a joyful occasion, has been for 2,000 years. You know, I'm a big fan of bumper stickers, and many of you have seen for decades the one that says, honk if you love Jesus, right? You've all seen those bumper stickers. Well, a new one's come out, and it's for the right side of the bumper. So the left says, honk if you love Jesus, and the other one says, text if you want to meet him. I remember my very first cell phone, one of those thick stubby things, you know, and analog, and driving down the freeway somewhere back when we didn't know better, talking on the phone, and in California, and I know the roads quite well there, but 20 minutes later I find myself going the wrong way on some freeway, and that was a heads up where you really shouldn't be doing this. So, Easter's history is something that's hard to relate to after so many centuries. But if we think back, think about the fact that, I mean, in this nowhere, sort of like Star Wars when they go to some far-off galaxy or planet, it's just a dust ball and it's just barbaric and just in some corner of space. Well, Palestine at the time was a nothing. It was a, as we say, a nebusha. And is that what we say?
That's
okay. I'm part Jewish.
But be careful.
By marriage. And yes, I do like bagels, don't I? And so it was a nothing place, all right? And so this, this preacher roaming the countryside with no credentials whatsoever, a fairly small band of people gathered around him, but crowds would flock to be healed, or so they said, and to hear what he had to say, which was, shall we say, unorthodox, and so on. So he made a little stir, a little tempest in a tiny teapot in a faraway land. Okay? Now, if he'd have simply died on the cross and was buried, that would have probably been pretty much the end of the story. Okay? And think of what it must, the resurrection defines Christianity, defines the life of Christ, and by extension, the truth that shall make us all free. When you think about it, took about 3 centuries, 312 AD, I think it was Constantine the Great, before a great battle, you all remember the story, saw a vision of the cross in the skies, and then it took him about a year, but he repealed the laws that were persecuting the Christians. They had grown quite a bit, maybe a quarter to half of the citizenry of the Roman Empire at that time were probably, by estimates I've read at least, were probably Christian. Well, think about it. There you are, you're St. Paul, you never really met Jesus technically, although you had a vision of him and so on. Or Peter roaming about the different cities of Asia Minor and Greece and then finally to Rome. It could not have been an easy sales job to talk about a person who was resurrected from the dead. It had to be pretty difficult. Why did it work? What did it mean? Well, I think back to my own children years ago. Ananda's a little different, unorthodox, right? And years ago, when Padma and I were younger and newly married and so on, living at the original Ananda community in California, which we call Ananda Village, out in the sticks, it was sort of rustic and not an easy life in terms of material comforts. And so we got married. Our founder, Swami Kriyananda, where'd you go? There he is. Married us on the hottest day of the year in the woods, around a fire. And so my Catholic parents and her Jewish parents came up to this crazy place in the middle of nowhere, of dirt, miles of dirt roads and, 100 and some degrees. It was pretty wild. And so, they were understandably a little skeptical and so forth. Here was this long-haired, bearded Swami with topless, so to speak, with a sarong on and playing a guitar, and it's pretty hippie-ish, right? Okay, so they went on home, happy to get out of there, I think, that same day. But as the years went by, and we had our children, 2 of them, and they would come to visit, or we'd visit them, what dawned on them gradually was they saw these lovely children, and they were happy and intelligent and well-balanced. Of course, they were our kids. What'd you expect? But it was the children. It was the life that they had, a life of intelligence, a life of community, of values, and so forth, that gradually won our parents and siblings to at least a level of respect for what we were doing. Think of those early Christians. They banded together and they had basically communities, okay? And they elevated the old world of the Roman Empire from a level of brutality within their own communities, at least, obviously, to beyond the level of brutality to where men and women, unheard of, were equals. I want to segue and talk a little bit about Mary Magdalene. There's a new movie coming out based on something called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Well, I don't personally get into all these little theories and that sort of thing, but you can tell even from the very words of the Bible that Mary Magdalene was somebody special. She was there at the cross. She was the first one to go to the tomb. She had obviously, whatever it was a deep and abiding relationship and perception of Jesus Christ. By contrast, those schmucky apostles were hiding in fear. Peter denounced Jesus 3 times on the night he was taken. Thomas was the doubter. I mean, these guys weren't, she was there at the cross with the beloved disciple John, as was mentioned in the reading. It was love that won the day. And whatever else they may say about Mary Magdalene, she understood the Christ and who Jesus was. So in the communities of the Christians that followed in the decades that came afterwards, they uphold, there were people of nobility, people generally of the poorer classes, we know that for a fact, although gradually others generally secretly got involved. But they treated each other with respect, with equality. And they served one another and others during famines and plagues and so forth. The impact on the citizenry of the Roman Empire was staggering, because the depths to which life had gotten in brutality, etc., most of the old religions were ignored, at least in terms of any great reverence by that point. They had all sort of declined in their vitality and were often, well, how do I put it? They were, just to say they had become degraded. Okay, that's all I'll say about that. And so the appearance of these people of finer feelings and so forth, who would go to their very deaths with joy, with martyrdom. Okay? Those apostles who went out, Thomas went to India, all the way to India. Most of them were martyred, but hundreds, maybe thousands of others who followed them in the decades and century or two, till Constantine changed it all. That was what, 2-3 centuries later, my God. So these people lived a life of nobility and a life of self-sacrifice. I mean, that transformation of those individuals, starting with the apostles and moving out through the Mediterranean with these people and who formed these communities, what a transformation of consciousness that took place. Of course, the downside was when it was made a state religion. We all know that history, but nonetheless, into the Dark Ages at the fall of the Roman Empire, those values, those qualities of devotion and the resurrected Christ told people of a brutal age. Not just that Jesus was someone special and had a miracle. No, that wasn't the meaning of the resurrection, neither then nor now. It's that we are that. That life goes beyond the death of the human body. This was a transforming lesson, and the power of that lesson came in the lives that it changed and the example that it gave to people who were basically lost. Okay? From that dusty outpost far away on the opposite side of the Mediterranean came a true revolution in consciousness from just a handful of people. It's hard for us to understand it. I was joking with Padma, I mentioned it yesterday at our retreat. I was thinking, gosh, the Catholics had a great idea. They made it a mortal sin not to come to Easter service, and attendance was always good. Maybe we should do something like that. We'll call it karma, bad karma. She said it wasn't a good idea, so I dropped it. But Easter defines Christianity because of the promise and the hope that it offers humanity. And it resonates not on a theological level or a dogma level. It resonates, of course, with spring. I saw a little thing the other day. You always see this kind of thing. People are constantly trying to reduce one thing to another. So this one was about the real Easter came from the worship of Ishtar, and that the word Easter came from Ishtar, and she was the goddess of sex. Great, okay, so what? But Easter is aligned with the Passover, which goes many centuries back before that. It just doesn't need to be reduced to something else. It simply is what it is. And the fact that, we have Easter with bunnies and chocolate and, so of course there's going to be a spectrum of understanding. There'll be people who take something holy and sacred and, make it into chocolate. Okay. What's wrong with chocolate? Nothing. So of course humanity sort of does this kind of thing. I mean, look what we've done to yoga. We've pulled it down from a purification rite, from a purification discipline, preparing one for meditation and for cosmic consciousness, into a fashion show. This is what people do. We project ourselves on to the rest of life. But the power of Easter will not go away. We can dismiss the dogmatism happily, as we would in a place like this, naturally. Yogananda's understanding of Jesus was that he too is an avatar. And as the Gita says, into every age, great souls incarnate to awaken us to the same truth, but with a new understanding according to what our needs are at that time. I came across something interesting. I'd never thought about it before, but think about those followers of Jesus in Jerusalem. They were all Jews, right? Just like Buddha and his followers were all Hindus. And so their Sabbath was, as we know, Saturday. Well, how did they ever have the nerve? I mean, imagine that after centuries of having their holy day of the week on Saturday. The young and new Christians changed it to Sunday. That was pretty revolutionary given who they were and what their past was. It's simple, because it was Sunday that Jesus was resurrected. And as the reading says, this phenomena, as strange as it might be to you and I in terms of our human experience, has been repeated down through the centuries, attested to by people of truth. Because it is universal. I think most people, the reason we don't think about our death, and maybe sometimes we should think more about it, okay, and live our life accordingly, but nonetheless, deep down, we don't believe it. Deep down, we know we're immortal. And when we're younger, we think we're omniscient too, but we soon grow out of that, have children, and then you realize you're not quite so smart. But anyway, deep down, we do believe. We know what's going on, we're in the know, we are immortal, because deep down, though it doesn't apply to our ego and personality and body, it applies to our spirit. This is what gives this celebration power. The fact that it comes at spring, as I said, is not surprising for what it represents, but in fact, in truth, the Passover of the Jewish tradition takes place right after the spring full moon. First full moon after the spring equinox is the historical time for the Passover. And so naturally it fits. These things are as above, so below. When we celebrated the equinox a week or two ago, or was it last week already? Whew, time just goes by. But, there's a power with the solstices and the equinoxes. We feel that. And so it's natural that in spring that there's a sense of renewal. And in the Passover, the 49 days that follow of that kind of renewal of our spirit. And this is the power of Easter, to give us that sense of renewal, that sense of that we are so much greater. And the contribution that our line of teachers, Yogananda, came to America in 1920, has to offer is this universalization. I just made up a word, cool. This universal understanding of who Jesus was. Because he is one of the greats down through history. His life changed the course of human history. There are Christians in every country that I've ever heard of, all the way to the Far East. And so, but we need now to see that deeper understanding. It need not be a sectarian holiday. It can be something that people of all faiths can celebrate because it offers to us who we truly are. This is the teaching of Vedanta. It's the teaching of metaphysical traditions of East and West. Genesis says we were made in the image of God. Jesus said to John, the great disciple, said to as many of us as will receive this teaching, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. It wasn't about Jesus, it was about us. And of course that resonates with us, doesn't it? With our culture, with our generation, is because our time in history is a time for self-awareness, a time for self-exploration, a time for understanding who we are, to grow out of stereotypes and archetypes, whether they be based on gender or race or religion. This is the revolutionary movement of our times, which America has the destiny to embody. We don't always do a very good job of it, but, that is our destiny, is to affirm that inner freedom. The deeper truth of freedom represented by America and its history and our values, which seem to have receded a little bit right now, but the purpose of that is spiritual freedom. Think of where that goes. Think of where the affirmation that I am not of a given race or color based on the superficial skin tone and color, that I'm not male or female, or I don't have to act out those roles according to history and archetypes, that I can pursue happiness. I can be what I am here to be. What a wonderful affirmation. Again, historically, if you think about it, that's revolutionary. But where does that lead, that freedom? Bit by bit, if we turn within, we find it's true in our dreams, we find it true at night, we find it true in our highest aspirations, that we are none of the things that we have identified in ourselves. We are so much more. This is the message of Easter. And it's a beautiful message and a timely message. And so I say, Happy Easter to all of us. Thank you.